welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, as James Richard has done just before we started going live, massive thanks to you. Smash the super chat. Also, there's a Patreon and PayPal link together with a crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using stock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Arwin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Hello.
Yes, people out there, share the show, but not on YouTube because you can't do that anymore. But because of that, you'll just have to share it everywhere else as much as you can. Let's get Nathan to the 20,000 subscriber mark.
Oh, thank you,
It's
Arwin.
about time.
It's a very important point, and it's just universally true for us in this subject matter. You know, they've openly and overtly said that they're not going to promote us. Quite the contrary. Well, if they're openly and willingly admitting that to Congress meetings and telling them how they're going to deal with this, then obviously we're not going to receive any promotion. That's pretty obvious. So therefore, the only promotion we do get is by people sharing the show, which is why I say it every single show. A couple of quick shout-outs before we jump into housekeeping. So James Richard, thank you very much indeed. I did read out your super chat in the pre-show, but I'm going to try once more. So Hunting Globies, : when that globe looked up to lick the globe, salt liquor, I had hung from the dang dung tree. The black swan got 'em good, right between the eyes. Good morning, panel. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, James Richards. It was very difficult to read. I don't know why. And also a shout out to that flat fellow. So really appreciate the support. Thank you for the sunglasses super chat. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
Not even from the dang dung tree.
The dang dung tree? Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No 15-degree deviation of the Earth-based variety, but luminaries have it.
The Earth-based variety? No?
No, not.
Everyone's off mute in the
No.
Discord server. Any evidence of axial rotation? Don't all go at once?
If there were axial rotation, then you wouldn't notice it. Everything would just seem to stand still because you don't see anything.
No, you would. You'd see 15 degrees an hour deviation. It's called Coriolis effect. If things left the non-inertial spinning reference frame, you'd
Oh, you mean
continue to
tornadoes?
rotate underneath them.
You mean tornadoes?
No, not tornadoes. You would observe deviation. So as you continue to rotate underneath things that were no longer attached, they would seem to deviate. For example, you send a drone up. So you've got a drone and you push the up stick and it just goes up. And then you let it hover. Well, if you're rotating underneath, then it would seem, on the equator, for example, to drift away at 1,000 miles an hour as you rotate underneath it. That's what Coriolis effect is. The apparent deviation of something that's not actually moving, a hovering drone, because you rotate underneath it. But if that was occurring, we'd be rotating underneath stuff, and we'd notice there'd be Coriolis effect. And all we get is people defending the fact that we don't see this deviation. But there'd be an effect.
Well, the only alternative would be that the entire universe would be spinning around us.
Well, then no Coriolis effect.
Yes, well, that's what the ballers say. So
No, they say there
they
is a
don't
Coriolis
understand
effect.
That they're actually claiming the entire universe is spinning around us, and the Earth is not spinning underneath. They just don't really realize it.
Yeah, they're denying their own claim, though. They're denying that there's Coriolis effect, and they say, no, we wouldn't expect things to drift apart. The Earth and the atmosphere move as one. Well, it's like, well, then you're in denial of your Coriolis claim that they drift apart at 15 degrees an hour, because that's what's supposed to happen to prove we spin. But we don't observe the effect. Even the trench-level fundies come here to tell us just how much we don't see the effect, or even tell us how their reference frames have been ruined. Right, Simon Dan?
Isn't basically the assumption of the Coriolis effect consequences based in normal Euclidean thinking when it's kind of already stated that there's bending of space-time going on? Well, maybe the bending of space-time of the Earth is what causes all these Euclidean and presumed effects to basically go away and make it all relative, so that the Earth is actually standing still towards itself and the entire universe is spinning around it, when the same could also be said in the reverse because of the bending of space-time.
Yeah, but then no Coriolis effect. Hold on, 10th. But then no Coriolis effect, Darwin.
Right.
Well, then not right. They claim there is Coriolis effect.
Well, they're wrong.
Well, I know they're wrong. There is
nothing
drifts away at 15 degrees an hour as we rotate underneath it. So there is no Coriolis effect. Nothing is drifting away at 15 degrees an hour as we rotate underneath it to cause this apparent deflection at 15 degrees an hour. That does not happen. It's supposed to if we're on a globe Earth that spins, though. It just doesn't.
I just don't know how Arwen snuck in the bending of space-time on this question.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gravity? No. Bending of space-time. We're not
That's
talking
gravity.
about gravity.
Yeah, that's gravity.
Gravity is just an effect of the bending of space-time.
No, it's the effect of the uneven distribution of mass. The bending space-time is gravity.
What?
The uneven distribution of mass is what they claim in their conceptual model causes the bending of space-time. That is gravity, according to Einstein. Conceptual mediums being bent. Space-time, that's gravity.
Okay, now I'm lost.
The cause, according to them, is the uneven distribution of mass. That's their cause. The effect, that's gravity, is the bending of space-time. That's the effect according to them. There is no effect. You can't bend a concept. You can't bend time. Space, in their vernacular, is outer space, and it's fake. You can't have gas pressure without a container.
But what does gravity do then if it is
Nothing.
the bending of space-time?
Nothing. It doesn't do anything. It's not a force.
It doesn't do it.
It doesn't.
But the ballers think it does a lot of things, though.
Yeah, they think it does. Yeah, you can think of it as a force, Arwen.
Oh, right. But how would a force then do those things? How would that force keep the gas pressure to the ball?
No. Thinking of it as a force doesn't make it do anything either. Just means you think about it doing stuff when it doesn't actually do it in physicality. Shout out to M for joining as a hyena.
I understand that, but if you're thinking of something, you would like that thought construction to be at least yielding a positive result for the mind experiment.
That's true.
Wouldn't you?
I often think of my Lexus as a Lamborghini.
Okay. Cool.
It's not a Lamborghini though, is it now? As much as I think of it as one.
Well, if thinking about it as such yields some kind of productive result to you, then why not?
Well, it's mental masturbation. You can think of it as a force.
Okay, but I'm just wondering, like, why would you want to think of it as a force that when it presumed to be a force doesn't actually do anything
Because it's
useful
the only way.
for the model?
Because it's the only way to keep the model going.
No,
no.
but it
Hold
doesn't
on.
keep it going.
Hold
That's the
on.
problem. It doesn't actually do anything within the model, even if you think.
No, it does. That's where you're wrong.
instinct.
Yeah, no, hold on. No. Conceptually, it does do something. Conceptually, just not physically.
What?
In the model, it does a lot of stuff, Arwen. Man, it does
But
do a
what?
lot in the model. Oh yes,
Like what?
yes.
But what does it then do in the model? What
Well,
does the gravity thought of as a force actually do
Told
within
you.
the model?
Told you 3 times. In the conceptual reified model that isn't physical, it's the bending of space-time caused by the uneven distribution of mass. Well, that's a lot going on there, conceptually.
No, that's a description of what it is or what it's supposed to be doing, but it doesn't actually describe what that does.
It does. It bends space-time. That's the
It doesn't
effect.
actually describe doing
Yeah,
anything.
it does. It's bending space-time, Arwen. It's just the fact that space-time, this conceptual medium, isn't something real, doesn't mean it's not conceptually bending it, and that's doing a lot of stuff in the model. There's stuff going on,
Like
man.
what?
Just not
Like
physically. All mental. All in your mind. There's a lot going on there, just nothing going on in physical reality. Doesn't mean nothing's going on in the model, though. Doesn't mean it doesn't do anything in the model.
So what does it mentally do within the model then, and not
Bend space-time! For God's sake!
Yeah, what does that do?
In physical terms, nothing.
Anything else in the model?
In physical terms,
Dr.
nothing.
Becky to get a PhD because of the
That's
model.
not part of the model.
Let's move on. Any single viable hypothesis.
Not moving on. I want to
Why
get
not?
to the bottom of this one. What does it actually do besides just being a
The
fallback
bottom,
trope?
I see. The bottom, well, that's relative. Especially within the model.
Oh God. So
Thank
it's
you.
literally just a dead end that doesn't lead to anything. That
No, it
was what
leads
I
to
was trying
time
investigate.
bending. What's your problem? Why aren't you conceptualizing this like the rest of the fundies?
Because I'm not a funny.
There's our problem.
Yeah, I
Go on,
don't
Elijah.
trust them. I know.
Hold on, Owen. Go ahead, Elijah.
Well, I guess there's a mass there, so it acts on space and time as if, I guess, space and time is a quote rolling other masses to the bigger portion of mass, whatever mass is. Is that what's happening conceptually?
Perfect. Now you're talking like a fundy. See? Why is it Eli can conceptualize this nonsense like a fundy and you can't, Owen?
I can. I'm just trying to look within the premise of the conceptualization and trying to find if it actually leads anywhere but a dead end. And my conclusion now is no, it doesn't. It just leads to a dead end where it doesn't actually tie in with anything else but a dead end.
Anything else physical? And you'd be correct.
Well, there are other parts of the model that it could potentially tie into, but it just doesn't. It just leads to this dead end.
Indeed. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
What do astrophysicists think gravity is?
Only in the model.
Bending of
No, come
space-time.
on.
Bending of space-time? They're currently on Einsteinian rhetoric.
No, that's not the right answer. The right answer is we don't know. Next question.
That's a Neil deGrasse Tyson quote when asked what gravity was.
Indeed.
No viable hypotheses? Anyone in Discord? Anyone got any science for the globe? Tumbleweeds. Clearly not. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Distance to what exactly?
Don't know what it is, but
The sun.
Then how can you figure out a distance to it if you don't know what it is?
like flies all over it, Arwen, aren't you? Yeah, you're right. This is a silly question. If we don't know what it is, and it's a non-tangible object that moves as you move, then how are you supposed to measure it?
Right. What's the distance to a rainbow? Where's that pot of gold at?
Well, precisely. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
I've heard somebody defending that, though, recently, or defending it, making claims about it, drawing the molten iron core conception into a very flawed model idea of how things transpire. That was Ken Hovind. He actually addresses it sometimes. It rarely happens, though. I don't hear any ballers out there ever even addressing the molten iron core. And probably for very obvious reasons, because Ken Hovind immediately fell in that trap by saying, oh, the magnetic field caused by the molten iron core. It's like, no. It's molten
what
iron,
molten iron
it's
core?
non-magnetic. It's beyond the Curie point. That's probably why ballers don't talk about the molten iron core.
It's a different kind of magnet for them.
Yeah, that's a special pleading fallacy. Hey, Chocolate.
But that's what they do.
A different kind of special
Good
magnet
morning,
that
guys.
doesn't apply to the normal rules of magnetism. Yeah, that's special pleading fallacy.
Right, they'll say it to everything. Say, well, it's a different kind of substance up there next to the vacuum of space, and that's why gas pressure could exist in a gradient next to a vacuum of space. It's a special kind of thing.
Yeah, special
it's
kind
kinda
that goes.
like refraction of a different character.
A refraction of a different character. Epic. Who was that said that?
That was that PhD Tony guy. I forget his name.
Tony Purcell. Of course it was.
Yeah, him.
Any evidence of the R value? Earth radius.
Long gone dead.
Again, there's quite a few people in Discord. This is the fundamental premise of the globe religion, that you have an R value to assume.
That would be the easiest thing, if it was one, to prove and show, wouldn't it?
Without R, they can't start the statement that they start for every single globe claim to be proof ever, which is, if the Earth is a sphere, you're going to need the R value to start your statement with that. And it's dead. Black Swan killed it. Last but by no
mathematically,
means...
it's still there. Oh, sorry.
That's all right, go ahead.
I'm just saying that mathematically R will always be there. As long as they assume a sphere, they have to insert an R-based system, even though it's supposedly debunked. Because they can't have a model without that R at all.
Yeah, absolutely correct. That's the starting point for their assumption. And every single claim proof of a globe ever will start with that assumption, if the Earth is a sphere. And that requires an R value, and they can't get one anymore. They've debunked it when they told us it was a refracted horizon, when their horizon was previously blocking boats and buildings with its physicality, measurable in feet and inches and meters, excluding all perspective. Well, now they tell us it's non-physical, it's refracted. Well, where'd you get your R value then? Oh, you don't! Bye-bye, globe! Horizon not physical, you're telling us how non-physical it is, and it needs to be blocking boats and buildings with a calculable feet and inches value. Not anymore!
Right, they don't own an R value anymore, but they're still leasing it, though. But they know that at some point they have to pay it back.
Yeah, it's on borrowed time, for sure.
Actually, they're renting it, and it hurts.
It's more like that, everyone's subletting, and they're completely unaware that they're subletting from someone who's lost their lease.
How'd you miss that clever pun right there?
What was your pun? I missed it, you're right.
I said they're actually renting it, and it hurts.
Hurts?
Hurts rent a car?
Hurts.
God.
The argument hurts them. Too early.
I was thinking of frequencies when you said hertz, like kilohertz, megahertz.
Oh, that's true. They could go that way too.
That joke is for America.
Always so layered. That's what makes it worth it.
Thank you, Elijah.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container for all the fundamentalist religious zealots who believe the sky is a vacuum. Don't be shy, fundamentalist religious zealots.
Even the vacuum has a container, so I don't know how they go about that.
Nah, it's just lower pressure everywhere. I think that they were just wrong with their assessment of this extreme vacuum. It was just a bunch of theorists. They never even tested that, They just assumed that it would have to be sort of mathematically and all that, still presuming that gravity is a force even at that time, which it no longer really is recognized as. So I think that the original conception of the extreme vacuum of outer space was just a raw estimation. They don't actually know that it is out there, So if there is a giant amount of space around us or above us, it's probably just filled with lower gas pressure.
Then it's not a space. If it was a space, 10 to the minus 17 tall space vacuum, then the gas we breathe would want to fill it. Shout out to Twad Wazzle for joining as a penguin, and also shout out to Bobby Zines for hitting the super chat, who says, question, is Tim Osman, aka Infinite Plane Society, same? No. So Tim Osman, with a Z, is Infinite Plane Society, and is a different spelling and also a different reference to a different Tim Osman. It's not his real name in both instances. But Tim Osman, with a double S, is Cognitive Dissonance, formerly known as Cognitive Dissonance, was his most prolific troll name before he just gave himself Tim Osman as the name. Anyway, they're different people. No, Infinite Plane Society is not Tim Osman. No. Thank you for the super chat, Bobby. Hope that clarifies things.
If I can still address the whole calling it space, like in my room, I also have space. So it would not be that hard to basically say, yeah, okay, it's not a vacuum space, but there's still a lot of space there, right? So it's just filled with something else, lower gas pressure. I think they could just decide to migrate there at some point. Just say, no, okay, well, it's not actually a vacuum, but it's still low enough to cause all kinds of hazards and all that.
Didn't they just do that when they said the moon is... Sorry, Charlie.
No, but they didn't really.
They're going to have to start scrubbing all the videos and documentation of them calling it the vacuum of space.
Right.
I'll get in touch with
vacuum, lower pressure. They could
with...
lawyer their way out of it, I think. Just calling
it. Well, they'll stick it down the memory hole.
Also considered lower pressure, and so it wasn't actually the original vacuum idea. It's just lower pressure. They could weasel their way out of it. No problem. If they were ordered to.
Yeah, they will have to. I mean, ultimately, it'll go down the memory hole. If you're not familiar with that reference, go and read 1984 again. But yeah, it's very easy for stuff to get stuffed down the memory hole and narrative to change. It's confused by people who look at pop culture and think they've seen a change in a film with Mandela effect. And I mention this because, specifically, this was something pointed out to me by Infinite Plane Society, aka Tim Osman, and Paula, Bible literalist. You couldn't get more stark contrasting people with the same view on Mandela effect, which is to say that it's standard practice in media to change stories, right? That's standard fare. But most people are blinkered to it. And the Oceania versus, what's the other one in 1984? I forget. They change who's at war with who all the time. 1 minute they're allies, then they're at war with them, and people just don't bat an eyelid. But yet people in the conspiracy realm will look at these obscure things that they think have changed within advertising or pop culture, and it's like, who cares? Changing things, aka Mandela effect, if you want to call it that, is standard media practice. Anyway, that concludes the housekeeping. Unless there's any evidence that we can have gas pressure without a container, given that they do actually claim it's 10 to the minus 17 torr, the most powerful vacuum known to man, Arwin. Not just space with gas pressure. As much as they might change the rhetoric.
But has any fresh claims been made about this, or is it just repeating of the original assessment?
You say the original assessment? I don't know how long it's been in place. If you told me tomorrow that really it was only finalised 100 years ago, I'd believe you. The story of space vacuum, that is.
Right, I don't know either, but it should probably be after the Big Bang Theory was made up, right? Or before?
Well, that's only, 70 years ago? So it would be before
the 60s.
Is it less time than that? Is it 50s?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
It's really young. You were surprised about that the last time, too.
It's Lemaitre, isn't it? I just don't know
Yeah.
I don't know the time span of when Lemaitre was around. I've never looked into Lemaitre particularly. Cursory glances here and there, but I don't know his history or when he was around. So,
well, he was at that big conference that QE always talks about, where Bork and Einstein and everybody was in, I think, 1920s or so. Remember that one?
I know which one you're talking about. So it's that ilk, it's that era. So when I say 100 years plus in terms of Big Bang, but I'm sure the sky vacuum existed before Big Bang cosmology, right? I don't know. I should know this history better.
Well, he was at that conference, and he was a younger scientist, and then it wasn't until later that he and Einstein kind of got together and shared ideas, and that's when the Big Bang actually came out officially. So it was after that conference.
I mean, the stories and the details about what these people said and did at these conferences, etc., within recent history, which is what I'd call that, I think a lot of it you can't really get around. In other words, they haven't been gone long enough to start fiddling with the narrative too much. But you go past that, maybe a couple of 100 years, and I think they just invent people.
Yeah, like Aristophanes and Cyan and the
It was Jaren that got on this tip because of it. You know, he started throwing out everything he knew or thought he knew on account of the fact that there was no primary source evidence when you're going back through really old history books. You're like, okay, there are subtle differences between the older ones and the new ones, but how far does it go back? Well, not very far, is the realistic answer. Well, if you've got no primary sources for any of this stuff, how do you know it's real? You don't, is the answer. Even by their own historic standards, you know, that's a historical standard, a very different standard to what we tend to demand here, which is scientific evidence. But, you know, by the historical standard, you'd need primary source evidence, and there isn't any for this shit. Excuse my language. I think our whole history of the globe... Go on.
If they think they're going to weasel away from needing containment, well, I'd say that you'd still need containment for what we see as a rainbow, which is actually a 360-degree ring. And in order for that to happen, the light has to pass through a solid surface. Which is why in Mongolia, they're claiming, oh, they're creating artificial suns somehow, because they can't just accept the easier idea that this place is covered and closed.
Right. Indeed. Yeah, we must have containment, that's the bottom line. So this whole notion of having a sky vacuum is absolutely absurd and ultimately a violation of natural law. It's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics to assert that we've got a vacuum of the sky. We haven't. And for anybody who doesn't realise the implications thereof, it means all pictures claimed to have been taken from that region are automatically fake. Hence we never talk about anything that's claimed to be proof from space here. That never happens. It hasn't happened in easily 2 years. It just doesn't happen anymore. Why? Because it's instantaneously debunked when you ask how you can have gas pressure without a container. If this region that this photo has come from is a vacuum, which it absolutely will be claimed to be, then how do we have gas pressure here? The gas would fill the space. It's entropy law. Therefore, who's ever going to come to us and present a picture of Earth from space or anything else from space as a claim proof of anything? Well, they won't, because it won't last long.
So, Nathan, I just put 2 things up in Masterby if you want to go there. These are the other individuals are credited to what also Eratosthenes did. So this is who they cite.
In Master B, you say?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, it's up. Yeah,
so they give, let me scroll down, I'm on the actual side here. Aryabhata, whatever, however you say that one. So was an Indian mathematician who lived from 476 to 550 AD and accurately wrote of the Earth as being spherical. He also estimated the circumference of the Earth within 67 miles of modern measurements, off only approximately 0.27. Then, of course, we have Big al-Biruni next, a Persian mathematician who lived from 973 to 1048 AD. Al-Biruni used triangulation to measure the Earth. His estimate was that the Earth had a radius of 6339.6 kilometers, which is 16.8 kilometers less, also approximately 0.27 off the modern measurement. And the last guy, Robert Helmert, I've never heard of him. In 1906, the German geodesist Frederick Robert Helmert determined that the Earth was a global ellipsoid, calculated within 100 meters, 0.002% of modern measurement. The only problem is black swan.
Do you want me to go on to the next one?
No, that was it. Yeah, that was the one with the last guy on it.
Oh, my bad. Okay, yes, I see. Yeah, they need a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon to make these assertions, and they don't have one anymore. They're telling us how it's non-physical refracted, debunking all of these claims made by people like al-Biruni that they've measured a radius by way of dip angle from a physical horizon, the one that they claim blocks boats and buildings, right? Well, they haven't got that anymore. The globe is dead. So quiet. Normally that would be the interjection point from a fundamentalist zealot who's really triggered about the fact that the globe's dead.
And that's why it's quiet, because all the arguments defending it are dead too. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, Rumpus was on the show, jumps in every now and then, and I had a little time with him before everybody else got him. And I said, Rumpus, is the Earth rotating? He wouldn't answer it. He evaded that question till the end. Then he says, yes, it's rotating. It's like one of their chief claims. He's shy about it. But come on, Rumpus, come back. Let's see if you can answer it quicker today.
No, it's not rotating, because their claim that we have Coriolis effect would be an effect we'd observed, and we don't. It's just that simple. So it's a very difficult and tricky subject. It's gone from quite annoying, convoluted and complicated to quite simplistic and quick to deal with. You know, are we rotating? All right, so we have Coriolis effect then. We're turning underneath stuff. No, it's all turning together. No Coriolis then. End of conversation.
Hey, Adam is in the chat, by the way, and he says about the vacuum thing that it's apparently in the 17th century discussed, but he says that no one has even directly claimed it. But
okay,
it would be interesting. Adam, get in here.
Yeah, I was going to say I can't phrase my questions through the chat to get concise answers out of him, but I'd love to know the history of the claim that we have an empty space, 10 to the minus 17 Tor above our heads, with clouds that we're also looking between us and it, not dispersing into it. You know, their claim that it just gets thinner and thinner and thinner and is eventually a vacuum is a violation of natural law. You know, high pressure wants to go into low pressure, so therefore the sky vacuum would be an empty space for the gas we're breathing to fill, and fill it must. That's what gas does, it expands in all directions. So where did this idea come from? Who's the first to postulate it? 1700s? Yeah, it's on the borderline for maybe having a primary source for someone, but Adam's saying no. It would appear no definitive time, just assumptions. Maybe Pascal in the 17th. Maybe Michelson Morley later. It seems no one claims it directly. Thank you very much, Adam. Talking about space as a vacuum, he thought it was worth giving extra clarity to what he was talking about, but yes, the sky vacuum specifically.
Can I try to propose a viable hypothesis of astrophysics?
You can. Just before you do, though, I'll just read out Brian's comment. It says NASA claims it, Nathan. Yeah, they do. NASA claim it's 10 to the minus 17 Tor. Feel free. Who was it? Eric. Is it Eric Bear?
Yeah, that's me.
Go ahead. Feel free.
I don't know if the independent variables can be, if it's valid, but full moon causes increase in crime. That's my hypothesis, and the independent variable would be the full moon. But there'd be no way to manipulate it other than like just when there is no full moon, like measuring the difference. That's
okay. Did you say increasing? Did you say increasing crime?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason for that, though, isn't there? It's a correlation. It's definitely not scientifically valid, and no, the cause would be man-made, because man thieving things is definitely man-made. So, yeah, you're not going to... Yeah. Anyway, the correlation is because it's brighter. You can see more. It's easier.
Well, they also say that a lot more... maybe this would be a natural occurring phenomenon, is that women go into labor as well on a full moon.
Yeah, could be an instinctual thing. You might, less likely to get lost or stumble around in the dark when you're trying to get to the hospital. If you, I don't know. I've no idea. But correlative only, I'm afraid, not scientifically validatable.
Right. If they would all go into labor, then everybody would a lot of people would start to have birthdays around a similar period. Like, oh, it's that moment in the month again that everybody's birthday is at.
Yeah, everyone had the same birthday. Okie doke. No science for the moon. Also, the phenomena kind of not related to the moon directly anyway. Like asking what the cause of the moon is, isn't it? What you've got to start by knowing what that thing is to know what it's going to be causing. Something I ask my kid quite frequently because she's young and imaginative. It's like, what do you think that is? What do you think that is? That big circle in the sky? Not even that big, really, but you know what I mean. Compared to the other lights in the sky. Never get an answer.
And what did you say?
I don't know. It's the only answer she can give. I don't know. I don't know, Daddy. Neither do I, is my reply. I don't know either. I'd love to, though.
Two pictures in Master B, Nathan, on Lemaitre and Einstein.
Ah, yes. High priests of heliocentrism. Whoops. There we go.
So it was the 1927 Congress, and that's where Bohr and all these Schrodinger and Heisenberg and all these guys were at this conference, and so was a young Lemaitre. And if you go to the second slide, it's got a picture of him with Einstein, and the originator of the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, I don't know if the fundies realise that a lot of their nonsense comes from Jesuit priests. But it does! Isn't that nice? What was the first bit? Oh, here we go. It's just a picture of everyone at the conference.
Yeah, and give some dates. And I think they had a couple of conferences. So one was 1933 and one was before, I think.
Excellent.
I found it interesting that they were there at the same time, all these characters, and then how that whole Big Bang grew out of that. They came out of Lemaitre. And then Einstein kind of deviated, or not deviated, but gravitated, if I can use that word, towards him, but argued with some of the other guys on other issues at the same conference.
Yeah, the people who were debunking him, probably. Yeah, so it doesn't seem like a very old, nonsense. Certainly the Big Bang you can tie down within a couple of lifespans. So it's very, very new. Which makes me think, well, if the majority of the Western world are currently so thoroughly indoctrinated with it, does that mean that we're at the start of a long and uphill battle to thoroughly indoctrinate people with it? Considering there's quite a lot of totalitarian authority being asserted on a lot of the Western world at the moment, you can only assume that might be the case, right? In other words, it's another form of control. We're all aware of the reasons why we've got this deception. But that control, maybe it's the beginning, as opposed to us saying, oh, well, people will appreciate the nonsense of an observably flat world being described as having antipodal people hanging off the bottom of where you're standing. That seems ludicrous to us. But maybe, like I say, we're at the beginning of an indoctrination process rather than at the end, because it does seem so very, very, very recent, right? Seems. Much as their fake history says otherwise.
Well, look what they're bringing in that wasn't in a few years ago.
Hold on, I've got two people. Hold on. Go. I had Eli first. Go ahead, Eli.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about that because it's so strange. It's almost like they want people to wake up to NASA lies. Putting out Michelle Thaler and this other guy. Who's that other guy? The poo-poo dude. And the things that they say is just easily debunkable. And it's like maybe they want us to reach a high fever pitch so they can concede to some other controlled environment that we unwittingly agree to. Like this flat earth model and these flat earth model pushers that seem to have no problems getting a larger audience.
Maybe. I mean, if you want to look to what they potentially could do, always look to the past. They say history repeats itself. Well, it's because psychopaths like to recycle. They're not very imaginative. So they'll reuse old, what would you call it? I was going to say regimes, but probably the wrong word. Methodologies, there you go, of exerting their control. Is that the correct way of saying it? asserting their control, maybe. Either way, they're going to just use
Exercising their control.
old plans and styles and techniques that have already been used. They just recycle them over and over again. So if you want to know what's going to happen in the future, look at some of the rhetoric of the past and you'll figure out what they're going to do next, because they'll just recycle something from days gone by. Again, we're in 2020 without naming anything specifically. What's currently happening has happened before. You don't have to look very far to find when they've done it before, and it's exactly the same. It amuses me when I point that out to people. But there we go. On the similar subject, my folks were expressing their concerns about the current state of affairs in terms of travel in the UK. While they were telling me all of this stuff, which I wasn't particularly interested in, I won't lie. I asked my mother what terror level we were at. What terror level are we at? She went, I don't know. I said, why not? Shouldn't you be terrified? Shouldn't you know how terrified to be? It's important, this stuff, right? Well, she said, well, it's not in the news. I said, well, what would make you know what terror level it was? Well, if it was in the news. They're not too concerned about the terror level right now, right? How interesting.
Weird. So it's not time to panic yet. It's just time to build a lot of tension, get very stressed out from all the double speak nonsense everywhere, and then wait until you get the start signal from the media. Now it's time to panic.
Yeah, exactly. People will take their cues from whatever they're told to take their cues from. People are very obedient and subservient and fickle. So, generally speaking, your average norm is very easy to manipulate. And there might be a certain member of my audience, or a few, that hear what I've just said and go, I better look up the terror level. I better be concerned about that. I forgot about that. That's something I need to be worried about.
Oh, dear.
Normies do amuse me, though. It is funny. They're just being manipulated with fear. That's all it is. Very powerful tool, though, right?
Well, it preoccupies a lot.
Yeah.
Well, back when 9/11 just happened, I was also like, oh, the DEFCON and emergency level. Yeah, because I believed it. So I was worried about it. And it distracted me a lot. A whole lot from everything else that I was doing. Or basically not doing at that point. Because of it. And that's what it's for. That's why people do hang on to fear porn and everything, because it distracts them from everything else.
And yeah, everyone's
they don't
talked
have to
about
realize
this stuff,
they
right?
can say, but this is important. So I got an important reason to distract myself from everything else in my life. That's a trick.
Well, I was certainly taught about this in school. It might have been when I was in a private school, but I was under the assumption that most people were acutely aware of propaganda and Bernays and psychological techniques that are used upon us, because I assume we were all taught it in school. Maybe I was just taught it in one particular school I went to, but were we not all taught what propaganda is? Just
Yes.
Pop quiz for the panel. In school, were you taught about propaganda?
Yes, I was.
Anybody else?
The problem with propaganda is that at some point it can be just too good. And then even if you start out realizing that it probably is propaganda, you want it to be real. And that's the really strong propaganda that is played into the natural need that is predicted to arrive in the people in response to the situation presented.
Yeah, Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution, right? Go on, Eli.
I was just going to say, I guess I was kind of taught about propaganda, but it was always set up so as I would be on the appropriate side before they would point out the propaganda of the other side that is very icky and I shouldn't think about.
Yeah, in itself, propaganda. In other words, what you're saying is you were told about the nasty Germans and how they used propaganda against their people and how bad that was, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but again, in and of itself, propaganda in the education, but yes, that's correct.
Yeah, it's often thought of as if it's going to be obviously evil.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a child story example of something that is real, but not the real. So it's like a toy version of evil to basically give kids kind of a hint as to what it is from a very simplistic standpoint, from a very simplistic view, when in reality, the covert nature of evil is just mind-boggling sometimes, very confusing. Well, you can't really teach a child that. They'll just panic, right? But the problem is that if you just go with that typical narrative of what evil is, and then you really start to believe it as real and not just as a kid's toy, then eventually the real evil might slip you by because it's not overt enough. It's a very tricky thing.
You've led me beautifully. Slip you by. You were in the Ballbusters chat yesterday, Arwin, right, when I posted this image? Put it up for the audience. The image from the third Matrix movie. So I was watching a documentary about the new Matrix movie, and obviously they're referencing various what they would call like historical or lore-based narratives within the film. And the image that's on screen now is actually from the Machine City, and it's viewed by Neo, and he's blind. Now this rolled by on my iPad, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, my God, this is absolutely riddled with subliminal messages. Now, subliminal embeds of horror faces and scary faces and death masks and scary animals bearing teeth. It's just absolutely riddled. And I was like, I've never seen an image with so many subliminals layered upon layered upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And I just thought, man, I have to share this with the guys in Ballbusters. So I did. So I shared this image, and then I was like, okay, before I show my little terrible circles around some of the subliminals, I'll just explain something to the audience. Let's just see if I can get this a little bit bigger while I'm doing this. So a way any subliminal will work is it works at varying distances. So it's not just the case that you'll just see it immediately pop out at you. You have to look at varying different distances. There you go, there's a bit bigger image so we can look at it in a bit more detail. But I'll stick up my circles around some of the scary, horrible faces, and then take your time in the aftermath, maybe pause it if you're watching this on a pre-recorded bit or an uncut and after show or whatever. But just look at it at varying distances and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I'll flick between the images without the circles on so you can see what it looks like au naturel, and then I'll stick them up with the circles just so you can get a nice example. I also did one pretty beautiful close-up of this scary looking dude. Let's see if I can get this looking a little bit better as well. I might actually zoom out to the normal view just so you can see this dude. A scary looking guy with his teeth and eyes screaming out of you from the Machine City when it's on fire, viewed by Neo with his blind eyes. So I just thought that was something I'd quite like to share. I haven't talked about subliminal messages for quite a long time, but it's something that still fascinates me to this day. But this one was a particularly epic sequence with the amount of layers of subliminals, and it was just unreal. You know, I've seen a few in Disney covers on DVDs and stuff, but basically this entire image, let's go back to the main image, this entire image is nothing but one massively ladled subliminal. That's all it is. Very cool. But it's just there to scare you. That's the whole point. At a subconscious level, when you're looking at something like this, it induces fear. That's the whole point.
So is this specific image from a scene in the Matrix Revolutions?
Yes.
From that?
Yeah, when he gets to the Machine City and he stands on the precipice of the Machine City with blind eyes tied up, and he can see the electricity running along the pipes so he can get to that opening. When he actually overlooks the city with a bandana tied around his eyes and pads on his eyes, that's what he sees. It cuts to him looking at it, then it cuts to this, his view, and it rolls for about 3 seconds. Should I dare to play it? Will I just get copyright strikes? Probably.
No, don't play it.
Well, I'll just get to the section where it actually plays so you can see just that 3-second clip. I'll just play it once more so you can see how long it's on screen for. About here-ish somewhere. There we go. That's how long you get. It's very, very short. Just one more time. There.
Right, so they quickly show you a giant detailed painting in just a few seconds.
Yeah,
There's no it's way that anybody in those few seconds the first time they see it can process any of it.
No, but
except for emotionally, they might get the sense of it, the feeling, and that's probably the idea behind it. Because hey, Neo was just blinded, you
Sure.
know.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's supposed to be terrifying to him.
Well, it shows him
there,
behind.
so-
The previous shot is him behind with it just looking black and like a city. So it then very quickly cuts to his view because they've already prefaced it by showing him finding his way while blind with the view that he gets. So you get an idea that it's his view before they show that shot. But prior to it, you just get a couple of snippets of what it looks like in reality. Then when you get that overwhelming bright shot, it's obviously much brighter than the contrasting dark shot of what it looks like in reality. So it's kind of overwhelming. But within that 3 seconds, you're bombarded with subliminal messages, so that you're in a feared, you're in that fight or flight mode going into that scene. So there's obviously cinematic intentions behind doing it in that way and layering it with subliminals. But like I say, I've just never seen one with so many and with such a short sequence and moving as well. There was a whole plethora of things that made that particular sequence of subliminals unique. Wow, there's a lot of tongue-twisting words. Really?
I was going to share that growing up in the era I did, it was always the Cold War and the Russians, and prior to that, it was obviously the World War II. So all the propaganda from each country was aimed at its people for specific reasons. So the Japanese would have their propaganda, the Germans theirs, the Americans theirs, the Russians theirs. Some of it was true, but mixed with all the other stuff, one big lie.
Yeah, that's the bit they don't tell you. That propaganda is 90%, if not more, real truth, easy to verify. And the propaganda part is normally only a very small percentage, weaved in with the truth.
Right. Or the most effective propaganda even is to just leave out things that are not inconvenient for the train of thought that they want the people to take within the context they're presenting. So they'll just present real information, then leave details out completely, even though somebody might, in the middle of it, confront them with it. Just ignore it. Ignore certain true parts to solidify the narrative in a certain railroad. That's also propaganda.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're saying biased reporting. Yeah, that's a form of propaganda, no doubt.
It's been used to no end. It's one of the first things I recognized from the news, even when I was younger. Like, why don't they say this? Why aren't they bringing attention to what's happening over there, which is obviously involved? That sort of thing.
Guns of Navarone RMP says, actually, NASA steals 60 million, I think it's now more than that, a day from American taxpayers, and in return they spend 30 million a month on FX, actors, propaganda, advertising, media, etc. I think that was in response to, do they claim it's actually a sky vacuum? No, they spend a lot of money on a lot of visual effects to convince you that people on Highwire are actually up in a fake place that violates natural law. Yep, they need the people to think that there's this thing called orbits, right? A tin can falling around a presupposed spherical surface at a given rate. What is it, 17,500 miles per hour? Their orbital falling speed around a presupposed spherical Earth. Well, they need that notion to be very much held by the general populace. That Earth's a sphere and things fall around it.
As a science fiction concept, it's very viable in the face of all the other extremities. If you believe the Earth is a globe in an outer space vacuum and all that, and there's a sun burning gas ball, then I think an orbit is not that far of a stretch, really, in the face of all that. Would you say?
In the model, yeah, I completely agree. It's a necessity in the heliocentric worldview, but it doesn't make it real. That's the bottom line, right?
No, what I specifically meant is that in the face of the extremities, the other extremities, the concept of an orbit is not that far, is not that how do you say, not that surreal compared to some other
Oh, I see what you mean.
problematic issues.
Yeah. Compared to the idea that the sky is a vacuum, the idea that stuff's falling around rocks, you kind of go, well, that's not quite as absurd, really. It is still way up there, though, in my view, Arwin.
Well, in reality, yes.
I'd put it way
Well,
up
in
there.
reality,
I see what
you can't. Go ahead, Elijah.
I see what you mean, Arwin. Because I mean, people don't say it enough, but it's like you got water in a vacuum, you got air in a vacuum, but even worse, they tell you that the sun is a burning ball of gas in a vacuum. And then there are other planets that are just gas in a vacuum. Like, that's insane. So the orbiting is like the easiest pill to swallow, I guess, if you're gonna be going into believing things.
Exactly. It's just a simple mechanical conclusion. Like, oh, this happens.
Just
And
never,
hey,
ever
it's supposed
observed,
to
ever.
be the same effect that causes the moon to spin around the Earth, right? So
No, no. They get the moon to be presumably assumed to be falling around in the same presupposition of an orbit. So no, they have the moon orbiting by presupposition, but it's not a way of explaining it, nor is it some simple explanation for the fact that the sun and moon move over my head in no way implies that they're falling around a spherical surface. That's just by presupposition and implication.
yeah.
Well, there we go. With that, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you joined as a member, smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!